What if T-Rex wasn't just a predator, but a problem solver? In 2023, scientists suggested it had 3 billion neurons, enough for chimp-like cognition. For a brief moment, it seemed dinosaurs might have been secret geniuses, but in 2024 the math didn't hold up. The claim collapsed under scrutiny, yet something more profound remained. It wasn't about superintelligence or tool use. It was about specialization, refined, precise, and efficient. T-Rex didn't need a primate brain. Evolution had already given it something even more fascinating: perfection through design. Science has a way of making the impossible seem ordinary, until suddenly, the ordinary becomes impossible again. For 200 years we've been digging dinosaurs from the ground, putting their bones together like prehistoric puzzles, and building stories about creatures that lived in a world so strange, it might as well be another planet. We thought we understood them. We were wrong. In just the last 5 years, scientists have uncovered truths so bizarre they sound like science fiction. Dinosaurs with vacuum cleaner mouths containing 500 teeth, predators with cricket bat tails designed for slashing, underground cities built by burrowing giants, colors so vivid they could take your breath away, a dinosaur that was essentially a 30-foot tall feathered chicken with claws longer than baseball bats. These aren't the dinosaurs of museums or movies. These are stranger creatures entirely, beings that lived by rules we're only beginning to understand. In worlds that worked in ways we're still discovering, they lived when the very air was different, when the map of the world looked nothing like today, when evolution was still figuring things out through trial and error with living creatures. Tonight we'll walk through that alien world. We'll meet its inhabitants not as Hollywood monsters or children's toys, but as the complex, impossibly beautiful creatures they actually were. We'll discover that the more we learn about dinosaurs, the more mysterious they become, and perhaps most remarkably, we'll find that these ancient beings still have lessons to teach us about survival, adaptation, and the strange mathematics of life on a planet that never stops changing. The story begins not with bones, but with light. In a laboratory in Beijing, Dr. Maria McNamara holds what looks like an ordinary fossil, brown stone, roughly the size of a dinner plate, marked with the faint outline of a small dinosaur's body. Psittacosaurus, which means parrot lizard, a name that seemed cute until scientists realized how accurate it was. This particular animal lived 120 million years ago, when the Earth was still young and wild, when the giant supercontinent was cracking apart like ice in spring, creating new oceans with each geological heartbeat. But when Dr. McNamara dims the lights and switches on an ultraviolet lamp, like a black light you might see at a party, the fossil transforms completely. The stone disappears. In its place glows the ghost of a prehistoric creature. Orange-yellow light radiating from skin, preserved not in ordinary rock, but in pure glass. Natural glass has replaced every single cell, every scale, every microscopic detail of this animal's hide, creating what's essentially a stained glass window into the age of dinosaurs. This is preservation beyond anything scientists thought possible. Under the special light, they can see individual skin cells, smaller than the tip of a needle, the boundaries between scales, even the tiny structures that once produced color. It's as if someone took a photograph with light that takes 120 million years to develop. But here's what makes this discovery truly mind-bending. This dinosaur had bird skin and reptile skin at the same time. Not the leathery hide of modern lizards, not the soft skin of mammals, but patches of different skin types with sharp borders between them. Picture a creature that was part bird and part reptile, with clear lines on its body, where one type of skin met another. This animal was an evolutionary experiment that no living creature tries today, a hybrid system that shouldn't work, but apparently did, for millions of years. The science behind this is like winning the lottery 1 billion times. Glass preservation requires chemical conditions so rare they happen maybe once in 1 billion attempts at fossilization. The fact that it happened at all suggests we've been missing an entire category of dinosaur preservation. Like discovering that some books can only be read under special lights. In the deserts of Niger, Africa, scientists discovered what might be the weirdest dinosaur head ever found. Nigersaurus looked like someone had attached a vacuum cleaner attachment to a dinosaur's neck. Its mouth was perfectly flat and rectangular, packed with an incredible 500 teeth, all crowded together at the very front of its jaw, like the bristles on a push broom. But here's the truly bizarre part. This dinosaur's head was so specialized for eating that it couldn't lift it more than a few feet off the ground. Imagine a 30-foot-long dinosaur that had to keep its head down like it was permanently grazing. The teeth were replaced constantly. Each tooth had 9 replacement teeth lined up behind it, ready to take over when the front tooth wore down. It was like having a conveyor belt of teeth in its mouth. The vacuum cleaner mouth tells us that Nigersaurus was essentially a living lawnmower. It could only eat soft ground-level plants, sweeping its head from side to side to crop vegetation like a prehistoric hedge trimmer. This dinosaur was so specialized that it could literally only look down. The bones in its skull made it impossible to lift its head and look up at the sky. This level of specialization is both impressive and dangerous in evolution. Nigersaurus was perfectly adapted for one specific lifestyle, but that also made it vulnerable when environments changed. It's a reminder that sometimes being too good at one thing can be a dead end. Time moves forward, but some dinosaur growth moved in directions that break all the rules of biology. In the desert badlands of New Mexico, scientists studying a group of Coelophysis, pack-hunting dinosaurs from when dinosaurs were first getting started, made a discovery that forced them to question everything they thought they knew about how animals grow. These dinosaurs, preserved together by a flash flood 220 million years ago, grew according to rules that shouldn't exist in nature. Imagine if some 4-year-old children were smaller than 1-year-olds in the same family. Growth patterns so weird they looked like flower petals when scientists plotted them on graphs. Almost no connection between how old an animal was, how big it was, and whether it was ready to have babies. Biology textbooks teach us that animals grow predictably, fast when young, slowing down as they age, eventually reaching adult size and stopping. But these Coelophysis followed no such rules. Some reached full size in 2 years, others took 6, some never stopped growing, others seemed to shrink. The difference was so extreme that scientists initially thought they were looking at completely different species until they examined the bones under microscopes and realized they were all the same type of dinosaur, just growing like nothing we see today. Think of it like this. Imagine if some teenagers were the size of adults, while some adults were the size of children, all living in the same town. That's essentially what these dinosaurs were doing. This discovery forces us to reconsider what we think we know about prehistoric life. If early dinosaurs could grow backwards, if size and age were only loosely connected, then every assumption we've made about dinosaur lives needs to be reconsidered. How do you understand animal societies when a smaller individual might be older and more experienced than a larger one? The backwards growing dinosaurs force us to face a humbling truth. Evolution is stranger than we imagine, and possibly stranger than we can imagine. In 2023, a brain scientist named Susanna Herculano-Hausel published a paper that sent shockwaves through the dinosaur world. Based on skull measurements and brain density calculations, she suggested that Tyrannosaurus rex had 3 billion brain cells, more than any modern reptile, comparable to baboons and other intelligent apes. The implication was staggering. T-Rex might have been as smart as modern apes, capable of solving problems, using tools, perhaps even primitive communication. The scientific community went wild. If true, it meant that 66 million years ago, North America was ruled by creatures with the brainpower of highly intelligent primates, but equipped with teeth like railroad spikes and a bite force that could crush cars. Imagine a 3-ton predator with the problem-solving abilities of a chimpanzee. The implications for how we understood dinosaur behavior and intelligence were enormous. But science has a way of correcting itself, and by 2024, the super-smart T-Rex had been thoroughly debunked. Scientists demonstrated that the brain size estimates had been blown way out of proportion, that the brain cell calculations were based on faulty assumptions, and that T-Rex likely functioned more like modern crocodiles than primates. Still impressive predators, certainly, but not the cunning masterminds of popular imagination. Yet the real T-Rex, stripped of fictional superintelligence, proves far more remarkable than any Hollywood monster. CT scans, like medical X-rays, but much more detailed, of T-Rex skulls reveal a sensory toolkit that borders on the supernatural. Vision like a hawk that could judge distances perfectly for targeting prey. Over 620 smell-detecting genes, more than modern cats, creating a sense of smell so powerful it could detect dead animals from miles away. Hearing tuned to low-frequency sounds perfect for detecting the footsteps of massive plant-eating dinosaurs across vast ancient landscapes. This wasn't a brutish monster, but a precision-built hunting machine, evolved over millions of years to hunt the largest land animals that ever lived. Every sense was perfectly tuned, every muscle optimized for the specific task of bringing down prey, weighing multiple tons. T-Rex didn't need primate intelligence. It had something far more elegant, perfect adaptation to its role as nature's ultimate predator. In the forests of ancient South America, evolution solved the problem of defense through one of the most radical weapon designs in Earth's history. Stegosaurus elengason possessed what scientists can only describe as a cricket bat tail, a flattened blade-like weapon unlike anything in the fossil record. This wasn't the club tail of tank-like dinosaurs or the spike tail of Stegosaurus. This was something entirely new, a tail weapon designed for slashing rather than bludgeoning, flat and sharp-edged like an ancient warrior's obsidian sword. Picture a dinosaur swinging a cricket bat made of bone, and you'll have the right idea. Computer modeling suggests it could deliver devastating sideways strikes, cutting through flesh and bone with equal efficiency. The tail weapon was so unusual that when scientists first found it, they couldn't figure out what part of the dinosaur it came from. It looked like nothing they'd ever seen before. But perhaps most remarkably, the cricket bat tail was covered in sharp, knife-like projections along its edges, like a medieval mace crossed with a chainsaw. This wasn't just a blunt instrument, it was a precision cutting tool designed to cause maximum damage to anything that got within striking range. The existence of such weapons tells us that ancient South America was locked in an arms race of stunning creativity. As predators evolved new ways to kill, plant eaters evolved new ways to survive. The result was an ecosystem where every adaptation pushed the boundaries of biological possibility, where survival required constant innovation. Stegosaurus represents the pinnacle of defensive evolution, a herbivore so well armed that it could probably take on most predators and win. Its evolution saying, "You want to eat me? Good luck with that." Imagine a chicken. Now imagine that chicken is 30 feet long, weighs over a ton, and is covered in fluffy feathers like a giant deadly down comforter. Meet Utyrannus, the feathered tyrant that completely changed how we picture the king of dinosaurs. Utyrannus was a relative of Tyrannosaurus rex, but it lived in the cooler climates of ancient China, where staying warm was more important than looking scary. So evolution gave it feathers, not the complex flight feathers of birds, but simple, hair-like feathers that worked like the world's most intimidating winter coat. The image of a feathered tyrannosaur looking like a giant deadly chicken forces us to completely reimagine the appearance of even the most familiar dinosaurs. This wasn't the scaly lizard monster of movies. This was a fluffy predator that could kill you with cuteness before it killed you with teeth. But Utyrannus wasn't alone in the feather game. The limestone quarries of China have revealed an entire world of feathered dinosaurs that looked more like bizarre birds than traditional reptiles. Microraptor shimmered in oily black iridescence like modern crows, but with 4 wings, fully feathered arms and legs that created a biplane configuration for gliding between trees. Anchiornis sported black bodies with white wing patches and red crests, looking more like a modern bird than many actual birds. Sinosauropteryx was reddish-brown with white undersides and distinctive banded tail stripes, plus a raccoon-like facial mask for woodland camouflage. These discoveries reveal that the boundary between dinosaurs and birds is entirely artificial. Birds didn't evolve from dinosaurs. Birds are dinosaurs, the last surviving members of a group that once ruled the planet. Every time you see a sparrow or an eagle or a penguin, you're looking at a living dinosaur, a descendant of the feathered revolution that began 160 million years ago. 75 million years ago, while massive predators stalked the surface of ancient Montana, an entirely different world existed just a few feet below ground. Here, In a network of tunnels that stretched across the landscape like a subway system, lived dinosaurs that most people have never heard of, but which may have been among the most successful species of their time. Eryctodromeus, the digging runner, was evolution's answer to a question most scientists had never thought to ask. What if dinosaurs went underground? At 7 feet long and weighing roughly 50 pounds, about the size of a large dog, these dinosaurs had all the physical features of dedicated diggers: powerful arm muscles for excavation, fused hip bones for stability while digging, reinforced nasal passages to filter out dirt and debris. But the discovery of Eryctodromeus was remarkable, not just for what it revealed about dinosaur diversity, but for how it was found. Complete skeletons, adults and young together, preserved in their original burrows, fossilized in the act of seeking shelter. These weren't animals that occasionally used burrows, they were creatures whose entire life strategy revolved around underground living. The burrows themselves tell a story of sophisticated engineering: spiral entrances that prevented flooding, like a curved drain pipe, multiple chambers for different activities, nurseries, food storage, communal spaces, ventilation shafts that ensured air circulation in underground networks that could extend for hundreds of yards. These dinosaurs weren't just digging holes, they were constructing complex underground cities. And they weren't alone. Fauna Hertzogi from Utah lived much of its life underground, with powerful arm muscles, fused hip bones, and specialized skeletal adaptations for subterranean living. Complete skeletons found chest down in their original burrows tell stories of dinosaurs that died in their underground homes, preserved in the act of seeking shelter. But perhaps most remarkably, this subterranean lifestyle offers a clue to one of paleontology's greatest mysteries. How did any dinosaurs survive the asteroid impact that ended their reign? While surface-dwelling giants faced the full fury of impact winter, darkness, cold, collapse of plant communities, the underground dinosaurs had shelter. Deep burrows provided protection from temperature extremes. Stockpiled food could sustain communities through the worst of the disaster. Underground water sources remained available when surface water froze or became contaminated. It's possible that burrowing dinosaurs rode out the apocalypse in underground cities, emerging years later into a changed world where their surface-dwelling relatives had perished. The age of dinosaurs was not a quiet time. The Earth itself was singing, low, rumbling harmonies that carried across continents, through forests, over the vast inland seas that split North America in half. These were the voices of giants, creatures whose very anatomy had evolved to turn their bodies into living musical instruments. Parasaurolophus possessed what might be nature's first wind section. The elaborate hollow crests that crowned their skulls weren't just for show or cooling. They were resonating chambers, precisely tuned musical instruments that these dinosaurs carried on their heads. Computer modeling of internal crest anatomy has allowed scientists to recreate their actual calls, and the results are haunting. Deep, trumpeting notes that could carry for miles across ancient landscapes. But these weren't simple honking sounds like a car horn. Different species of Parasaurolophus had differently shaped crests, producing distinct pitches and tonal qualities, like different instruments in an orchestra. Males and females had different crest sizes, creating different voices for each sex. Even individual variation in crest shape meant that each animal had a unique voice, recognizable to others across vast distances. Think of it like this. Imagine if every person had a built-in trumpet on their head, and you could identify your friends and family from miles away just by hearing their unique horn sound. That's essentially what these dinosaurs were doing. Recent research suggests that large predators like Tyrannosaurus produce sounds more like modern doves than Hollywood roars. Instead of opening their mouths to bellow, they likely kept their jaws closed and inflated throat pouches to create low-frequency booming sounds, closed-mouth vocalizations that could carry for miles without revealing the predator's location. This makes perfect sense from a hunting perspective. A roaring predator alerts every prey animal within miles, but a predator that can communicate through sounds below human hearing range, inaudible to many prey species, gains enormous advantages in coordination and stealth. The truly massive dinosaurs, the long-necked giants that dominated ancient landscapes, likely took vocal communication to even greater extremes. Their extended respiratory tracts, stretching from nose to tail through hollow vertebrae, created resonating chambers hundreds of feet long. These were living pipe organs capable of producing sounds so low they could travel for hundreds of miles through solid ground. Imagine the dawn chorus of the age of dinosaurs, deep, bone-shaking thrumming as giant dinosaur herds called to each other across vast distances, the trumpet fanfares of duck-billed communities coordinating daily activities, the closed-mouth booming of massive predators marking territories and negotiating dominance hierarchies. When the asteroid struck 66 million years ago, one of the things that died was this planetary chorus. The complex acoustic ecosystems that had evolved over millions of years fell silent in a geological instant. The Earth stopped singing. In the red rocks of Colorado, scientists discovered something that made them question everything they thought they knew about dinosaur behavior. Scattered across an ancient landscape, now preserved in stone, were dozens of circular scrape marks, each one about the size of a manhole cover, arranged in patterns that spoke of intention, of purpose, of something that could only be described as choreography. These weren't random scratches left by feeding or nesting. They were too regular, too purposeful, too clearly arranged to be anything but deliberate. Computer analysis revealed they were made by large meat-eating dinosaurs, creatures weighing several tons, performing coordinated movements across this ancient ground. But movements for what purpose? The answer comes from modern biology. These scrapes match exactly the lekking behavior of modern birds, communal mating displays where males gather to perform elaborate courtship rituals for choosy females. Picture a dance floor the size of a football field, where massive predatory dinosaurs performed choreographed routines to win mates. The scrape marks reveal the specific movements: backward kicking to clear vegetation, deep scraping with powerful claws, circular movement patterns that created perfectly round display courts. Some scrapes show evidence of multiple visits, suggesting these were traditional lekking sites used by generation after generation of dinosaurs, like nightclubs that stayed popular for millions of years. But perhaps most remarkably, the Colorado Lek site contains over 50 individual scrapes, suggesting that dozens of dinosaurs participated in these communal mating displays simultaneously. Imagine the scene: massive meat-eating dinosaurs, possibly weighing several tons each, gathering in the early morning light to perform synchronized courtship dances, their movements so vigorous they carved permanent marks in the ancient earth. The discovery of dinosaur dancing forces us to confront our assumptions about prehistoric behavior. We tend to imagine dinosaurs as simple creatures driven by basic instincts: eat, fight, reproduce. But complex mating displays require sophisticated social behaviors, the ability to coordinate with others, to follow traditional protocols, to invest enormous energy in activities that don't directly contribute to survival. These ancient dance floors remind us that life is not just about survival, it's about style. Evolution doesn't just select for efficiency, it selects for behaviors that seem extravagant, wasteful, even counterproductive from a purely utilitarian perspective. The fact that massive predators invested enormous energy in elaborate courtship displays suggests that there's something fundamental about the drive to create beauty, to perform, to turn survival into art. 214 million years ago, something unprecedented happened in the history of life on Earth. A group of early dinosaur relatives began walking north from the ancient supercontinent across bridges of land that connected South America to what would become Greenland. It was a journey of 6,500 miles, the distance from New York to London, completed not by individuals, but by an entire species over the course of just 20 years. This wasn't migration in any sense we understand today. This was colonization on a planetary scale, triggered by changes in atmospheric chemistry that remain barely comprehensible to modern science. Global carbon dioxide levels dropped from 4,000 parts per million to 2,000 ppm, still impossibly high by today's standards, but enough to remove climate barriers that had confined these early dinosaur relatives to southern continents for millions of years. The evidence comes from Plateosaurus fossils found in both South America and Greenland, animals that are genetically and physically identical despite being separated by thousands of miles of ancient ocean. Dating techniques confirm that the colonization happened in a geological instant, a 20-year window in Earth's 4.5 billion-year history. But how do you move an entire species across a continent in 20 years? These weren't flying animals or sea creatures. They were land-dwelling plant eaters, each individual capable of maybe 20 to 30 miles per day under ideal conditions. The mathematics seems impossible until you consider the scale of environmental change that drove the migration. Climate modeling suggests that the carbon dioxide drop created a green corridor, a band of newly hospitable climate stretching from equator to pole, lined with plant communities that could support massive plant-eating populations. As southern latitudes became too dry to sustain large dinosaur populations, northern latitudes became accessible for the first time in millions of years. The Plateosaurus herds weren't just wandering randomly north, they were following climate, chasing the edge of habitability as it shifted across continents. Each generation moved a little further, until populations that had started in Argentina were grazing in Greenland forests, adapted to entirely different ecosystems, but still recognizably the same species. 66 million years ago, the Earth received a visitor from deep space, not aliens, but something equally foreign to terrestrial life, a chunk of rock and metal the size of a small city, traveling at 45,000 miles per hour through the vacuum between worlds. It had been falling toward our planet for millions of years, crossing the orbits of dead worlds, gathering cosmic dust like a herald of apocalypse. The impact site was the shallow sea that covered what is now Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula. When the asteroid struck, it released energy equivalent to 10 billion atomic bombs detonated simultaneously. The explosion was so violent, it punched a hole through the Earth's crust, creating the Chicxulub crater, a wound 90 miles across and 12 miles deep, carved into the planet in less than a second. But the real catastrophe wasn't the impact itself, it was what happened next. Within minutes, a curtain of fire swept across North America. Debris launched into space by the impact rained down across the continent as shooting stars, each fragment glowing white-hot as it tore through the atmosphere. Forests ignited simultaneously across thousands of square miles. The air itself became fire. Within hours, a wall of water 1,000 feet high raced across the Gulf of Mexico, carrying with it the shattered remains of marine ecosystems, the pulverized bones of sea creatures, chunks of impact glass forged in the moment of collision. When these tsunamis reached land, they deposited layers of debris that would become the geological signature of the end of the dinosaur age, but the worst was yet to come. The impact had vaporized massive quantities of sulfur-rich rock, launching billions of tons of sulfuric acid into the upper atmosphere. Combined with soot from global wildfires and pulverized rock from the impact itself, this created a planetary shroud that blocked 99% of sunlight from reaching Earth's surface. Day became night, and night became eternal. Temperatures plummeted, photosynthesis stopped. Plants died by the trillions, taking with them the foundation of every land-based food web. The great dinosaur ecosystems that had flourished for 165 million years collapsed in a matter of months. Plant eaters starved first, then the predators that depended on them. The giants that had ruled the earth became walking skeletons, then corpses, then fossils. Yet in the midst of this planetary catastrophe, some dinosaurs survived. Small meat-eaters that could fly above the devastation, burrow-dwelling species that could wait out the impact winter underground, water-dwelling forms that found refuge in rivers and lakes, less affected by the surface catastrophe. These survivors carried the dinosaur legacy into the New World, eventually diversifying into the 10,000 bird species that rule the skies today. Perhaps the most profound revolution in recent dinosaur science involves something that supposedly shouldn't exist: original organic material preserved for 66+ million years. Dr. Mary Schweitzer's groundbreaking work has shattered the conventional wisdom about what can survive the vast spans of geological time. In laboratory after laboratory, researchers are now finding soft tissue preservation in dinosaur fossils that were supposed to be completely turned to stone. Transparent, flexible blood vessels extracted from T-Rex leg bones, stretchy brown matter that bends and flows like fresh tissue, microscopic structures that look exactly like red blood cells, complete with internal details that shouldn't survive a single winter, let alone millions of years. Think of it this way. Imagine finding a 66-million-year-old piece of meat that's still soft and bendy. That's essentially what these scientists discovered inside what everyone thought were completely fossilized bones. The mechanism behind this impossible preservation involves iron chemistry that operates like natural formaldehyde, the same chemical used to preserve specimens in biology class. When dinosaurs died, iron from their own blood created a chemical environment that cross-linked proteins and prevented decay. Combined with rapid burial in porous sediments that carried away bacteria and enzymes, some dinosaur soft tissues entered a state of chemical stasis that has lasted since the age of dinosaurs. Using advanced techniques borrowed from medical research, scientists can now identify original collagen, the protein that makes up much of our bones and blood vessels, in dinosaur bones, complete with the characteristic patterns that mark it as genuine animal tissue. Mass spectrometry reveals amino acid sequences that match modern bird proteins, providing molecular evidence of the dinosaur-bird evolutionary connection. But the implications extend far beyond individual specimens. If soft tissue preservation is possible under the right conditions, then it's likely far more common than we realized. Dr. Schweitzer's team has found evidence of organic preservation in about half the fossils they've tested, suggesting that molecular paleontology, the study of ancient biological chemistry, is about to revolutionize our understanding of prehistoric life. Hidden in museum collections around the world are dinosaur fossils that represent creatures larger than any we've yet discovered. This isn't speculation, it's mathematics. Computer modeling based on population dynamics and fossil preservation rates suggests that the largest dinosaurs ever found represent perhaps the 50th percentile of their species' maximum size. Using Tyrannosaurus rex as a model, scientists have calculated that some individuals likely reach 70% more massive than any fossil yet discovered. These giants, weighing 15+ tons instead of the current record of 9 tons, existed in the 99th.99 percentiles of Tyrannosaur body size. They were so rare that it might take hundreds or thousands of years to discover their fossils based on current excavation rates. Think of it like this. If you measured the height of 100 random people, you probably wouldn't find the tallest person who ever lived. The same principle applies to dinosaurs. We've found big ones, but probably not the biggest ones that ever lived. The same mathematical principles apply to every dinosaur species. The largest Triceratops ever found probably wasn't the largest that ever lived. The most massive long-necked dinosaur discovered likely pales in comparison to the true giants that roamed ancient landscapes. We're living in a world where the most spectacular dinosaurs remain hidden in rocks we haven't yet cracked open. But these mathematical monsters aren't just theoretical curiosities. They represent a fundamental truth about the fossil record. We're sampling a tiny fraction of the life that actually existed. Every museum display, every reconstructed skeleton, every artistic restoration represents just the tip of an iceberg of diversity that extends far beyond our current knowledge. In the underground chambers of a massive scientific facility in France, scientists are performing impossibly precise autopsies on creatures that died 230 million years ago. Using X-ray beams 10 trillion times brighter than medical X-rays, imagine the most powerful X-ray machine in a hospital, then multiply that by 10 trillion. They're peering inside fossilized dinosaur droppings to reconstruct the last meals of ancient predators with atomic-level precision. The technique reveals preservation so perfect, it defies imagination. Inside a single piece of fossilized dinosaur poop from Silosaurus operlensis, a dinosaur ancestor from Poland, researchers discovered an entire beetle, Triomyxa coprolithica, with its legs, antennae, and delicate body structures preserved in three-dimensional detail. This tiny bug was swallowed whole 230 million years ago and has remained essentially unchanged ever since, trapped inside fossilized feces like an insect in amber. But this single beetle represents just one meal in a vast reconstruction project. Dr. Martin Kvarnström and his team have analyzed over 500 bromelites, fossilized feces, vomit, and digestive contents to create the most detailed picture ever assembled of how dinosaurs conquered the planet through dietary innovation. The superpowered X-ray images reveal a hidden world of ancient predation. Fish scales with their distinctive patterns intact, crushed bones showing tooth marks from massive predators, semi-complete fish that tell stories of aquatic hunting strategies. Even plant cells, with their internal structures preserved, pass through digestive tracts, but somehow immune to decay. This research addresses a critical 30 million year gap in our understanding of dinosaur evolution, the period when small, unremarkable reptiles transformed into the dominant land animals on Earth. The answer, it turns out, was written in their excrement. The fossilized poop reveals that early dinosaurs were opportunistic omnivores, eating fish, insects, plants, and anything else they encountered. This dietary flexibility allowed them to survive the environmental chaos of the late Triassic, when the supercontinent was breaking apart and climate was shifting dramatically. The story of impossible dinosaurs continues to unfold in real time. In 2024 alone, scientists named dozens of new species, each one challenging our assumptions about what was possible in the ancient world. These aren't just additions to the dinosaur family tree, they're revelations that force us to rewrite the rules of ancient life. Tyrannosaurus macrensis, discovered in the Badlands of New Mexico, represents something that shouldn't exist according to traditional tyrannosaur evolution. This predator lived 5 to 7 million years before T-Rex, but with a more slender jaw and different skull proportions. Most remarkably, it was found over 100 miles from any ancient coastline, tyrannosaurs living in inland environments we never imagined they could inhabit. Picture this. While we always thought tyrannosaurs lived near ancient seas, this one was found in what was essentially ancient Colorado, mountains, forests, and rivers, but no ocean in sight. The skull bears the scars of ancient combat, a deep groove that speaks of battles fought with other tyrannosaurs in landscapes where massive predators competed for territory, far from the marine environments where we usually find their fossils. Lokiceratops rangiformis pushes the boundaries of dinosaur ornamentation into the realm of the fantastical. This massive horned dinosaur possessed the largest frill horns ever discovered, blade-like structures that resembled caribou antlers, but made of solid bone. Living 78 million years ago, alongside 4 other similar species, it demonstrates a level of rapid evolution and regional diversity that suggests the ancient world was far more dynamic than we imagined. Enigmacurza mollyborthwicki, no larger than a Labrador retriever, represents the challenge of finding small dinosaurs in formations famous for giants. Discovered in Colorado's Morrison Formation, the same rocks that yield Brachiosaurus and Allosaurus, this tiny plant eater reminds us that for every giant we've found, dozens of smaller species probably lived alongside them, their delicate bones scattered and lost to time. The first thing you notice about Big Mama is the position of her arms. Spread wide, curved protectively around the rim of her nest, frozen in a gesture of maternal devotion that transcends 75 million years. This Sittipati died as she lived, protecting her eggs from an ancient sandstorm that buried her alive, but not before ensuring her clutch remained covered, warm, safe from the environmental catastrophe that claimed her own life. Big Mama isn't alone. Multiple Sittipati specimens have been found in identical positions. Adults with their bodies arranged protectively over nests, arms spread like feathered umbrellas, sometimes with their heads tucked down against their chests as if sleeping. These weren't accidents of preservation. These were parents who chose to die rather than abandon their responsibilities. The eggs beneath these devoted mothers tell an even more remarkable story. Arranged in concentric circles with mathematical precision, like a carefully planned flower garden, each egg positioned to maximize heat distribution and minimize crushing risk. Some still contain baby dinosaurs, their development frozen at various stages, providing snapshots of Sittipati growth from conception to hatching. These embryos already show the characteristics that would make them successful predators: sharp claws, hollow bones, the beginnings of feather follicles that would eventually give them display plumage. But perhaps most remarkably, chemical analysis of the eggshells reveals that Sittipati mothers were actively keeping their nests warm with their own body heat. Not just laying eggs and leaving, as modern crocodiles do, but maintaining constant temperature through their own bodies, like modern birds. This level of parental investment requires enormous energy, months of sitting motionless, vulnerable to predators, burning body fat to keep eggs warm. The dedication is even more striking when you consider the alternatives. Sittipati were active predators, built for speed and agility. Sitting on a nest for months meant giving up hunting, territory defense, even basic survival activities. Yet they did it anyway, generation after generation, for millions of years. In the Badlands of Niger, where the Sahara Desert now bakes under relentless sun, scientists discovered the remains of one of the strangest predators ever to walk the earth. Nigersaurus possessed something that sounds impossible, a mouth containing over 500 tiny teeth, arranged like the bristles of a vacuum cleaner, designed for a feeding strategy that no living animal attempts today. Picture a dinosaur the size of an elephant, but instead of a trunk, it had a mouth nearly 3 feet wide filled with batteries of microscopic teeth. These weren't the massive fangs of Tyrannosaurus or the grinding molars of plant-eating giants. They were delicate, precisely arranged tools designed for the most specialized feeding behavior in dinosaur history. Nigersaurus was a living lawnmower designed to skim plant material from the surface of ancient swamps with mechanical precision. Its skull was so lightweight, it weighed less than a modern chicken's, despite being 3 feet long. This wasn't just an adaptation for a specific diet, it was the result of evolutionary forces pushing anatomy to the absolute limits of biological possibility. The discovery came from CT scanning fossilized skulls with medical-grade X-ray equipment. What the scans revealed challenged everything paleontologists thought they knew about dinosaur feeding. The teeth were arranged in columns, with replacement teeth growing continuously from below, like a biological conveyor belt that never stopped moving. As the front teeth wore down from constant use, new ones moved forward to take their place. Dr. Paul Sereno, who discovered Nigersaurus, describes it as a 30-foot-long crocodile with a mouth like a vacuum cleaner. But this comparison, while vivid, barely captures the strangeness of this animal's anatomy. Its neck was perfectly adapted for ground-level feeding, unable to lift its head above shoulder height. It lived its entire life looking down, sweeping its vacuum cleaner mouth across ancient swamps, collecting plant material with industrial efficiency. The mystery deepens when you consider Nigersaurus's environment. Fossil evidence suggests it lived alongside some of the largest predators in dinosaur history: Sarcosuchus, a crocodile the size of a school bus, and Carcharodontosaurus, a predator even larger than T-Rex. How did such a delicate, specialized feeder survive in an ecosystem dominated by massive killers? The answer may lie in its feeding strategy itself. While other dinosaurs competed for larger plant resources, tree ferns, seed pods, tough woody stems, Nigersaurus had discovered an entirely uncontested niche. It was harvesting the microscopic plants that other dinosaurs couldn't even see, much less eat. In effect, it had found a way to live on the crumbs of the ecosystem, thriving in spaces too small for larger competitors to exploit. Recent isotopic analysis of Nigersaurus teeth confirms this interpretation. The chemical signatures match those of algae, small ferns, and other ground-level plants that grew in the shallow waters where larger dinosaurs couldn't efficiently feed. This dinosaur had essentially discovered an ecological basement, a layer of productivity that existed beneath the notice of other herbivores. The discovery of Lokiceratops rangiformis in 2024 revealed that the final chapter of the dinosaur age was far more spectacular than anyone imagined. This massive horned dinosaur, named after the Norse god of mischief, possessed the largest and most elaborate skull ornamentation ever found in a ceratopsian, and it lived alongside 4 other equally spectacular horned species in the same ancient ecosystem. Lokiceratops measured 22 feet from nose to tail and weighed over 11,000 pounds, roughly the size of an African elephant. But where elephants have relatively simple anatomy, Lokiceratops was a living cathedral of bone, sporting asymmetric blade-like horns that resembled ancient Viking weapons more than anything from the natural world. The skull alone measured over 7 feet long and was adorned with horns and spikes that followed no symmetrical pattern. The left side differed dramatically from the right, creating a deliberately asymmetric display that may have served as individual identification, like a facial fingerprint that allowed these massive animals to recognize each other across vast distances. But Lokiceratops wasn't alone. The same fossil site in Montana's Kennedy Coulee revealed evidence of 5 different ceratopsian species living in the same ecosystem 78 million years ago, a level of diversity that challenges our understanding of how large herbivores can coexist. Each species had dramatically different horn arrangements, suggesting they had evolved complex social signals to avoid competition and confusion during mating seasons. The discovery site tells a story of catastrophic preservation. These massive animals were caught in a flash flood that killed entire herds simultaneously, preserving a snapshot of an ecosystem at the peak of its complexity. The sediment contains pollen from over 200 plant species, suggesting these horned dinosaurs lived in forests of botanical diversity that rivals modern rainforests. Dr. Mark Lowen, who led the discovery team, describes it as an evolutionary arms race of ornamentation. Males with more elaborate horns had better mating success, which drove increasingly spectacular displays. But unlike modern animals, where such arms races typically lead to single winners, the Lochiceratops ecosystem supported multiple simultaneous experiments in skull architecture. The rapid diversification revealed at this site suggests that sexual selection was driving evolution at unprecedented speeds during the final period of dinosaur history. Rather than decline and stagnation, this was an era of explosive innovation, with new species evolving elaborate display structures faster than their environments could change. Recent analysis of dinosaur brain structure has revealed that several species were perfectly adapted for nocturnal hunting, possessing sensory capabilities that rival or exceed those of modern owls and bats. Shibuya deserti, a small Mongolian dinosaur about the size of a chicken, had vision and hearing so acute it could hunt in complete darkness. The evidence comes from studying the internal structure of fossilized skulls using high-resolution CT scanning. Shibuya's eye sockets reveal adaptations for extreme low-light conditions, enlarged optic nerves, specialized retinal structures inferred from bone anatomy, and eye positioning that provided binocular vision with precise depth perception. But it was the dinosaur's hearing that proved most remarkable. The inner ear structure of Shibuya matches that of modern barn owls, animals capable of hunting prey in complete darkness using sound alone. The cochlear ducts are elongated and positioned to be most sensitive to the exact frequency ranges produced by small mammals moving through vegetation. This combination of enhanced vision and hearing created a dinosaur that was essentially a guided missile for small prey, capable of detecting and intercepting mouse-sized mammals under conditions where most predators would be helpless. Shibuya hunted during the darkest hours of the night, when its prey was most active, but other predators were blind. The discovery forces us to reconsider the ecology of Cretaceous nights. While larger dinosaurs slept, an entire ecosystem of small nocturnal species was active. Shibuya and its relatives represented a completely separate evolutionary experiment, dinosaurs that had opted out of the daylight competition and evolved to exploit nighttime niches. Dr. Jonah Choiniere, who studied Shibuya's sensory adaptations, describes it as a dinosaur that lived in a different world from its contemporaries. While other species competed for resources during the day, Shibuya had the night shift entirely to itself. The anatomical adaptations go beyond just vision and hearing. Shibuya had enlarged olfactory bulbs for enhanced smell, based on the size of openings in the skull where these structures would have been housed. Its limb proportions suggest it was built for rapid, precise movements in three-dimensional environments, exactly what you'd expect from a predator navigating complex vegetation in darkness. In the red rocks of Colorado, paleontologists have discovered the first direct evidence of dinosaur courtship displays, massive scratched areas in ancient sediment that reveal complex mating rituals involving choreographed movements, territorial displays, and what can only be described as prehistoric dance performances. The scratches, called scrape ceremony sites, cover areas up to 50 meters in diameter and show evidence of repeated use over thousands of years. These weren't random disturbances, they're organized patterns that match the courtship displays of modern ground-dwelling birds, but on a scale that speaks to the massive size and energy of their creators. Analysis of the scratch patterns reveals that male theropods would create elaborate ground displays to attract females. Using their powerful hind legs, they would scrape intricate patterns in the mud, kick up debris, and perform ritualized movements that left distinctive signatures in the sediment. Different scratch patterns represent different species, each with its own courtship language. The discovery site contains over 60 individual scrape marks, representing a prehistoric equivalent of a bird lek, a communal display ground where multiple males would compete for female attention. But unlike modern bird leks, which might cover a few acres, this dinosaur dancing ground spans several square miles. Dr. Martin Lockley, who discovered the site, describes it as a Mesozoic nightclub, a place where dinosaurs came to show off, compete for mates, and engage in social behaviors we never imagined they were capable of. The evidence suggests these display grounds were used seasonally, drawing dinosaurs from hundreds of miles away for annual mating gatherings. The scratch marks tell individual stories of competition and display. Some show evidence of aggressive encounters between rival males, with overlapping scratch patterns that suggest physical confrontations. Others reveal the delicate patterns created by successful courtship displays. A few preserve the moment when pairs of dinosaurs move together in what appears to be synchronized behavior. Chemical analysis of the sediment reveals that these display grounds were maintained over long periods. The scratch marks were refreshed annually, with new patterns added each breeding season. Some sites show evidence of use spanning thousands of years, suggesting that successful display grounds became traditional gathering places passed down through generations. The discovery provides the first direct physical evidence of complex dinosaur mating behaviors that paleontologists had only been able to infer from skeletal anatomy. The size and energy investment represented by these display grounds suggests that sexual selection was a major driving force in dinosaur evolution, possibly explaining the elaborate ornamentation seen in many species. One of 2023's most shocking revelations completely overturned decades of popular dinosaur imagery. Research led by Thomas Cullen proved that large theropod dinosaurs, including Tyrannosaurus rex, had lips and soft tissues that completely covered their teeth when their mouths were closed, making them look far more like giant monitor lizards than the snarling movie monsters of popular imagination. The evidence comes from multiple lines of research that all point to the same conclusion. Dental wear patterns on dinosaur teeth show that the tips, the parts that would be exposed if dinosaurs had lipless mouths, are less worn than the middle sections. This wear pattern is only possible if the teeth were protected by soft tissue covering during most of the animal's life. Comparative anatomy with modern crocodiles and lizards provides additional evidence. Animals with permanently exposed teeth, like crocodiles, show specific adaptations for keeping those teeth moist and clean, specialized grooves, extra blood vessels, and modified saliva production. Dinosaur skulls lack these anatomical features, suggesting their teeth were covered and protected by lips. Perhaps most convincingly, the teeth themselves show no evidence of the enamel reinforcement that would be necessary if they were permanently exposed to air. Exposed teeth dry out and become brittle. Dinosaur teeth show no such adaptations, indicating they were kept moist by soft tissue covering. The reconstruction of T-Rex with lips creates a dramatically different image of these apex predators. Instead of constantly visible fangs, they had mouths that could close completely, hiding their weapons until the moment of attack. This would have made them far more effective ambush predators, able to approach prey without revealing their deadly intent. Dr. Cullen describes the discovery as a reminder that paleontology is a forensic science. We can't just assume that extinct animals looked like Hollywood monsters. We have to follow the evidence wherever it leads, even if it challenges our preconceptions. The lip discovery extends beyond just theropods. Similar analysis of other dinosaur groups reveals that soft tissue covering was likely common throughout dinosaur evolution. Many of the fearsome-looking skulls in museum displays would have appeared much more gentle in life, with their dental weapons hidden behind protective tissue. This research highlights how much of dinosaur appearance remains unknown. Soft tissues rarely fossilize, leaving paleontologists to infer their presence from indirect evidence. The lip discovery suggests that our mental images of dinosaurs may be systematically biased toward more aggressive appearances than these animals actually possessed. In the permanently frozen ground of Alaska's North Slope, paleontologists have uncovered evidence that completely overturns our understanding of dinosaur reproduction and parental care. Here, in what was the Arctic Circle even during the warm Cretaceous period, small theropod dinosaurs were not just surviving the polar winter, they were choosing to nest and raise their young in conditions that would challenge modern Arctic animals. The discovery of Truden nests in Alaska reveals that these chicken-sized predators remained active year-round in environments where winter temperatures dropped below freezing and the sun disappeared for months at a time. Chemical analysis of eggshells shows they were laid during the coldest parts of the year, when most animals would be seeking warmer climates hundreds of miles to the south. The nests themselves tell a story of remarkable adaptation. Built in raised mounds with sophisticated drainage systems, they were positioned to take advantage of geothermal heat from underground hot springs. The parent dinosaurs had discovered and exploited the same geological features that modern researchers use to keep buildings warm in the Arctic. But the most remarkable aspect of these Arctic nurseries isn't their construction. It's the evidence they provide of extended parental care under extreme conditions. Microscopic analysis of fossilized eggshells reveals that parent Troodon maintained precise temperature control inside their nests for months at a time, using their own body heat to keep eggs warm during the polar night. The young that hatched from these eggs weren't typical helpless baby dinosaurs. Bone histology reveals they were born with advanced development and accelerated growth rates that allowed them to survive Arctic conditions from their first day of life. These were Arctic specialists, evolved specifically for life in Earth's most challenging environments. Dr. Anthony Fiorillo, who has spent over a decade studying Arctic dinosaurs, describes the discovery as proof that dinosaur parental care was far more sophisticated than we ever imagined. These animals weren't just laying eggs and hoping for the best. They were making complex decisions about where and when to reproduce based on their understanding of geological and seasonal patterns. The existence of Arctic nurseries suggests that late Cretaceous dinosaur communities had developed migration patterns of stunning complexity. While some species traveled thousands of miles to avoid winter conditions, others had evolved to exploit the seasonal advantages of polar reproduction: fewer predators, abundant summer food resources, and nesting sites protected by geography from southern competitors. Recent isotopic analysis of sauropod teeth has revealed one of the most extraordinary migration stories in the history of life on Earth. Camarasaurus, a 50-foot-long giant weighing 20 tons, regularly traveled over 300 miles between seasonal feeding grounds, a journey that seems impossible for animals of such massive size, until you understand the sophisticated strategies they evolved to make these epic travels possible. The evidence comes from studying the chemical signatures locked in fossilized teeth. Like modern elephants, sauropods grew new tooth surfaces continuously throughout their lives, creating a chemical record of everywhere they had been and everything they had eaten. Analysis of these dental records reveals migration routes that spanned entire regions, following seasonal patterns that remained consistent for millions of years. The physics of moving a 20-ton animal over hundreds of miles presents challenges that no modern land animal faces. Camarasaurus solved these challenges through adaptations so specialized they seem almost impossible. Their feet functioned like biological snowshoes, with broad, padded surfaces that distributed weight across soft ground that would bog down smaller animals. Their necks served as mobile cranes, allowing them to feed while walking, eliminating the need to stop for extended periods. But perhaps most remarkably, sauropod herds appear to have practiced a form of environmental engineering that prepared their migration routes in advance. Trackway evidence suggests that scout groups would travel the routes weeks before the main herd, creating packed earthen highways that could support the massive weights that would follow. The migration routes themselves reveal sophisticated understanding of regional geography. These dinosaurs were following ancient river valleys, mountain passes, and coastal plains with precision that suggests generational knowledge passed down through social learning. Some routes crossed areas that would have been completely underwater during certain seasons, indicating that sauropods timed their movements to coincide with predictable changes in water levels. Dr. Christy Curry Rogers, who led the isotopic analysis project, spent 7 years tracking the chemical signatures before reaching a stunning conclusion. These animals were operating on geographical knowledge that spanned entire regions. They weren't just wandering, they were following routes that had been refined over millions of years of evolution. The discovery forces us to reconsider the intelligence required for such behavior. Navigation across continental-scale distances requires not just memory, but the ability to integrate complex information about seasons, geography, weather patterns, and resource availability. These massive animals were functioning as biological navigation systems, processing environmental data on a scale that challenges our understanding of animal cognition. Recent discoveries in Chinese fossil deposits have revealed that the transition from scales to feathers was far more complex than previously imagined. Psittacosaurus specimens, preserved under ultraviolet light, show zoned development, regions of the same animal's body that maintained reptilian scales, while other areas developed primitive feathers. This discovery solves one of evolution's great mysteries. How did dinosaurs maintain essential skin functions while experimenting with revolutionary new structures? The answer is that they did both simultaneously, creating a patchwork anatomy that combined the best features of both reptilian and avian skin types. The zoned development pattern appears to have been under precise genetic control. Feathered regions were concentrated around areas that benefited from insulation, the back, neck, and limbs. Scaled regions were maintained in areas where waterproofing and protection were more important, the belly, feet, and around the eyes. Under ultraviolet microscopy, the boundaries between scaled and feathered regions are sharp and precise, suggesting that individual cells received specific genetic instructions about which type of covering to produce. This level of developmental control indicates that the scale-to-feather transition was actively managed by natural selection rather than being a gradual, accidental change. The implications extend far beyond just understanding feather evolution. The zoned development system reveals sophisticated genetic regulation that allowed dinosaurs to experiment with new anatomical features while maintaining essential functions. This same developmental flexibility may have enabled the rapid diversification that characterizes late dinosaur evolution. Dr. Maria McNamara, who led the UV analysis project, describes it as watching evolution in action at the cellular level. We can see exactly how these animals were transitioning between different evolutionary strategies within the same individual. The discovery also provides insight into how modern birds maintain their complex feather patterns. The genetic systems that create zoned development in living birds appear to be evolutionary descendants of the same mechanisms that allowed dinosaurs to experiment with mixed integument types millions of years ago. Beneath the Badlands of Montana, scientists have discovered the remains of the most sophisticated underground construction project in prehistoric history. Oryctodromeus, the digging runner, didn't just burrow for shelter, it created underground living spaces with engineering principles that wouldn't be out of place in modern construction projects. The burrow complex, preserved in 3 dimensions by volcanic ash, reveals a network of tunnels spanning over a square mile. These weren't simple holes in the ground. They were carefully engineered living spaces with separate chambers for different activities, ventilation systems that maintained air circulation, and drainage features that prevented flooding. Oryctodromeus was built for this lifestyle. At 7 feet long and weighing about 50 pounds, it had all the anatomical features of a dedicated excavator: powerful shoulder muscles, reinforced skull bones for pushing through hard soil, and fused hip bones that provided stability during digging. Its hands were tipped with specialized claws that functioned like biological pickaxes. But the burrows reveal capabilities that go far beyond individual excavation. The tunnel system shows evidence of coordinated construction by multiple individuals working together according to what appears to be a master plan. Entrance tunnels spiral downward to prevent flooding, main corridors follow natural contours to minimize structural stress, and living chambers are positioned to take advantage of natural thermal regulation. Dr. David Verricchio, who discovered the Oryctodromeus complex, describes it as proof that some dinosaurs had evolved social behaviors and planning abilities that we never suspected. These weren't just animals seeking shelter, they were engineers creating living spaces according to architectural principles. The underground chambers serve different functions that reveal sophisticated understanding of space utilization. Nursery chambers were positioned in the warmest, most protected areas of the complex. Storage areas were located near entrance tunnels for easy access. Communal spaces were large enough to accommodate multiple individuals, suggesting these animals had complex social interactions underground. Evidence suggests that some chambers were used for food processing and storage. The floors are covered with processed plant material that shows signs of deliberate preparation, possibly involving fermentation or other food preservation techniques. These dinosaurs may have been storing food during abundant seasons to survive periods when surface resources were scarce. In the laboratories of Montana State University, Dr. Mary Schweitzer continues to make discoveries that challenge our understanding of what can survive the vast spans of geological time. Her team has now extracted not just collagen proteins, but complex organic molecules from dinosaur fossils over 75 million years old, substances that conventional chemistry says shouldn't exist after more than a few thousand years. The latest breakthrough involves the discovery of intact amino acid sequences in Brachylophosaurus fossils. These aren't just random organic residues, they're specific protein fragments that can be compared directly to the same sequences in modern birds, providing molecular evidence of evolutionary relationships that confirm what paleontologists have long suspected from skeletal anatomy alone. The preservation mechanism involves chemistry that was previously thought impossible. When dinosaurs died under specific conditions, rapid burial in iron-rich sediments, the iron from their own blood formed chemical bonds with proteins in their tissues. These iron-protein complexes proved remarkably stable, creating molecular time capsules that preserved biological information for tens of millions of years. Using mass spectrometry techniques borrowed from medical research, Schweitzer's team can now read these amino acid sequences like ancient texts. The proteins tell stories of dinosaur metabolism, growth rates, and even stress responses during the animal's final days of life. Chemical signatures in the preserved proteins reveal information about diet, health status, and environmental conditions that no skeletal features could provide. But perhaps most remarkably, the preserved proteins contain information about dinosaur reproduction that was completely unexpected. Female dinosaurs show protein signatures associated with egg production, but the timing suggests reproductive cycles that lasted much longer than previously thought. Some species appear to have been reproductively active for months at a time, indicating extended breeding seasons that may have involved complex courtship behaviors. The molecular evidence also reveals that many dinosaurs experienced seasonal metabolic changes, similar to modern migratory birds. Protein signatures from bones deposited during different seasons show dramatic differences in metabolic rate, suggesting that even large dinosaurs may have entered states of reduced activity during resource-scarce periods. Dr. Schweitzer describes these discoveries as reading the chemical autobiography of extinct animals. We're not just studying fossils anymore, we're studying the preserved biochemistry of living organisms that died millions of years ago. The implications extend far beyond individual discoveries. If proteins can survive for 75 million years under the right conditions, it opens the possibility of detecting organic molecules in much older fossils, potentially extending our molecular understanding of life back hundreds of millions of years into the deep past. In the laboratories of the University of Bristol, researchers have reconstructed the exact color patterns of Psittacosaurus with such precision that they can determine not just what this dinosaur looked like, but how it moved through its environment and what that environment looked like 120 million years ago. Using electron microscopy to study fossilized melanosomes, the cellular structures that produce color in living animals, scientists have painted a portrait of a dinosaur more vibrant than any museum reconstruction. Psittacosaurus was dressed in complex camouflage patterns that reveal sophisticated adaptation to its forest environment. The animal's back was dark brown, gradually fading to light tan on its belly, a pattern called countershading that's common in modern forest animals. But the details of the pattern reveal something extraordinary about Cretaceous forests. The transition zones between light and dark areas match exactly the lighting conditions you'd find in dense woodland with specific levels of canopy cover. This allows scientists to reconstruct not just the dinosaur, but its entire ecosystem. The forests where Psittacosaurus lived were dominated by conifers and early flowering plants, growing densely enough that filtered light created specific illumination patterns. The dinosaur's color pattern was specifically adapted to this light environment, proving that Cretaceous forests had particular structural characteristics that can be inferred from dinosaur camouflage. But the most remarkable discovery comes from studying the dinosaur's face. Psittacosaurus had a distinctive dark pattern around its eyes, similar to the facial markings of modern animals that are active during low-light conditions. This facial mask serves a specific function in living animals. It reduces glare and helps with vision in challenging lighting. The presence of this facial pattern in Psittacosaurus suggests these dinosaurs were crepuscular, active during dawn and dusk when lighting conditions are most challenging for vision. Combined with other anatomical evidence, this paints a picture of small dinosaurs moving through dense forests during the twilight hours, using sophisticated visual adaptations to navigate complex environments. Dr. Jakob Winter, who led the color reconstruction project, describes it as forensic paleontology, using color patterns as evidence to solve mysteries about ancient ecosystems. Every stripe and spot is a clue about how these animals lived and what their world looked like. The color analysis has since been applied to dozens of other dinosaur species, revealing a prehistoric world far more colorful than the gray and brown creatures of older reconstructions. Anchiornis was jet black, with white wing patches, like a prehistoric magpie. Sinosauropteryx had reddish-brown stripes that would have made it nearly invisible in the dappled light of ancient forests. Recent analysis of hadrosaur brain structure using high-resolution CT scanning has revealed something extraordinary about these duck-billed dinosaurs. They possessed enlarged regions of the brain associated with complex communication and social cognition. Parasaurolophus wasn't just making noise with its elaborate head crest. It was engaged in sophisticated acoustic communication that may have included abstract concepts. The evidence comes from studying the internal structure of fossilized brain cases using the same imaging technology used to study living brains. What researchers found challenges our basic assumptions about dinosaur intelligence. The areas of the brain associated with sound processing, social behavior, and complex cognition were proportionally larger in hadrosaurs than in most modern reptiles. Parasaurolophus possessed what neuroscientists recognize as the anatomical prerequisites for complex acoustic communication. The hollow crests that crowned their skulls weren't just musical instruments, they were sophisticated sound production devices, capable of creating dozens of distinct vocalizations, each potentially carrying specific meaning. Computer modeling of the internal crest structure reveals that different species of Parasaurolophus had differently tuned instruments on their heads. Each species produced sounds in different frequency ranges, suggesting they had evolved separate acoustic channels to avoid communication interference. Like radio stations broadcasting on different frequencies, each species had its own sound signature, but the truly remarkable discovery comes from studying the patterns of wear inside fossilized crests. The internal surfaces show evidence of deliberate modification, tiny adjustments to the resonating chambers that would have allowed fine-tuning of sound production. These dinosaurs weren't just born with their voices, they were actively modifying their instruments throughout their lives to create new sounds. Dr. David Evans, a paleontologist at the Royal Ontario Museum, spent 5 years analyzing the acoustic properties of hadrosaur crests before reaching a remarkable conclusion. These animals were capable of producing and processing acoustic information at a level of complexity that suggests advanced social communication. They weren't just making noise, they were having conversations. The implications extend far beyond individual communication. Mass fossil sites containing hundreds of hadrosaurs suggest these animals lived in highly organized social groups with complex hierarchies and cooperation. The enlarged brain regions associated with social cognition suggest they were capable of understanding the intentions and emotions of other individuals, a cognitive ability that most animals never develop. Evidence from bone beds suggests that hadrosaur herds were organized into family units within larger social structures, with acoustic signatures that identified individual relationships across extended networks. These weren't just anonymous herds moving across ancient landscapes. They were sophisticated societies with individual identities, family bonds, and possibly even cultural information passed down through generations. In the Gobi Desert of Mongolia, scientists have discovered one of the most bizarre dinosaurs ever found, a massive plant eater with only 2 enormous claws on each hand, challenging everything we thought we knew about theropod anatomy and behavior. Duonicus tsogbartari, whose name means 2 claws, represents a completely unique solution to the challenge of processing tough plant material. This 10-foot-tall, 570-pound dinosaur possessed the largest preserved claw sheaths ever found in a medium-sized theropod. But what makes Duonicus truly extraordinary isn't just the size of its claws, it's that it had only 2 of them per hand, instead of the 3 that characterize virtually all other theropod dinosaurs. The claws themselves tell a story of extreme specialization. Chemical analysis reveals that the actual keratin sheaths were 40% longer than the underlying bone structure, meaning these animals had claws that extended far beyond what the skeleton alone would suggest. The claws showed extreme curvature, 120 degrees from base to tip, with sharp edges that remained keen throughout the animal's life. But perhaps most remarkably, the claws show wear patterns that suggest they were used like precision tools rather than weapons. Microscopic analysis reveals scratches and chips that match the patterns you'd see from cutting and manipulating plant material, not from combat or defensive use. Duonicus was using its massive claws like biological pruning shears. The discovery forces us to reconsider the entire Therizinosauriid family, the group of massive, clawed dinosaurs that Duonicus belongs to. Previously thought to be primitive plant eaters that simply used brute force to process vegetation, the precision of Duonicus's claws suggests these animals were engaged in sophisticated plant manipulation that bordered on horticulture. Dr. Yuongnam Lee, who led the discovery team, describes it as a dinosaur that had evolved beyond simple herbivory into something approaching plant management. These claws weren't just for eating plants, they were for selectively harvesting and possibly even cultivating them. The 2-clawed condition appears to be an extreme example of evolutionary specialization. By reducing the number of claws from 3 to 2, Duonicus was able to develop each remaining claw to enormous size and precision. The resulting tools were capable of delicate manipulation that would have been impossible with the more generalized three-claw arrangement of its relatives. Recent discoveries in Alaska have revealed that the Arctic regions of the late Cretaceous were home to some of the most spectacular horned dinosaurs ever found. Ugronaluk kukpikensis, a massive hadrosaur whose name means ancient grazer of the Colville River, lived year-round in polar conditions that would challenge any modern large mammal. But what makes these Arctic giants truly remarkable isn't just their size, it's their sophisticated adaptations for life in extreme environments. Bone histology reveals that these dinosaurs had evolved specialized metabolic systems that allowed them to maintain high activity levels even during the months-long polar night when temperatures dropped well below freezing. The discovery of multiple age classes in Arctic fossil deposits proves that these weren't migrant populations seeking temporary refuge from southern climates. These were permanent Arctic residents that reproduced, raised young, and lived their entire lives in polar conditions. Chemical analysis of their teeth reveals they were eating Arctic-adapted plants that modern large herbivores couldn't digest. Perhaps most remarkably, the Arctic dinosaurs show evidence of seasonal physiological changes that allowed them to survive months without sunlight. Bone chemistry reveals that they could slow their metabolism during the darkest periods, then rapidly increase growth rates when spring returned. This metabolic flexibility required sophisticated hormonal control systems that rival those of modern Arctic mammals. Dr. Anthony Fiorillo, who has led Arctic dinosaur research for over a decade, describes these discoveries as proof that dinosaurs were far more adaptable than we ever imagined. These animals weren't just surviving in the Arctic, they were thriving there, using physiological strategies that we're still trying to understand. The Arctic dinosaur discoveries have profound implications for our understanding of dinosaur physiology and the global climate of the late Cretaceous. If massive reptilian dinosaurs could maintain active lifestyles in polar conditions, it suggests that global temperatures were higher than previously thought, or that these animals had evolved warm-blooded metabolisms much earlier than expected. Advanced isotopic analysis of dinosaur bones has revealed that these ancient giants were far more mobile than anyone suspected. Chemical signatures locked in fossilized bone tissue tell stories of seasonal migrations that spanned hundreds of miles, dietary changes that tracked environmental shifts, and individual life histories that can be read like autobiographies written in calcium and phosphate. The technique works by analyzing the ratios of different isotopes, variations of chemical elements, that were incorporated into bone tissue as the animals grew. Each geographical region has distinctive isotopic signatures based on local geology, climate, and plant communities. By reading these signatures in sequence along the length of a bone, scientists can track an animal's movements throughout its entire life. Camarasaurus juveniles show isotopic signatures indicating they were born in upland regions with cooler, drier climates. As they grew larger, the signatures shift to lowland regions with warmer, wetter conditions. This suggests that young sauropods lived in different habitats than adults, possibly seeking protection in mountainous regions before joining adult herds in the valleys. The most remarkable discovery involves Allosaurus specimens that show isotopic signatures from regions separated by over 500 miles. These massive predators weren't just local hunters, they were long-distance wanderers, following prey herds across vast territories and returning to specific regions for breeding seasons. The chemical signatures suggest individual Allosaurus made these journeys multiple times throughout their lives, indicating sophisticated spatial memory and navigation abilities. Even more surprising are the dietary stories revealed by isotopic analysis. Many supposedly strict herbivores show chemical signatures indicating they regularly consumed aquatic plants, marine algae, and even shellfish during certain seasons. The rigid plant-eater versus meat-eater categories that dominate popular understanding appear to have been much more flexible in reality. Maiasaura bone beds in Montana reveal that these good mother lizards coordinated their movements across entire regions. Isotopic analysis shows that individuals from different geographic areas would converge on specific nesting sites, suggesting these dinosaurs had sophisticated knowledge of optimal breeding locations that drew animals from hundreds of miles away. Dr. Henry Fricker, who pioneered isotopic analysis of dinosaur bones, describes it as reading the chemical diary of extinct animals. Every meal they ate, every place they traveled, every environmental change they experienced is recorded in their bones at the molecular level. The technique has revealed migration patterns that rival those of modern mammals, Some hadrosaur species show evidence of seasonal movements that followed predictable routes for millions of years, creating ancient highways across continents that were used by generation after generation of dinosaurs. Study of dinosaur bone pathology has revealed healing capabilities that seem almost miraculous by modern standards. Large dinosaurs possessed regenerative abilities that allowed them to survive injuries that would be immediately fatal to any living animal, regrowing bone tissue, healing massive fractures, and recovering from infections that persisted for months. Allosaurus specimens from collections worldwide show evidence of injuries that should have been immediately fatal: deep bite wounds that penetrated to vital organs, massive bone fractures that would have prevented movement, and infected wounds that show signs of chronic inflammation. Yet these animals not only survived these injuries but continued to grow and thrive for years afterward. The bone healing patterns reveal regenerative processes that exceed anything seen in modern reptiles or birds. Fractured vertebrae didn't just heal, they were completely rebuilt, often becoming stronger than the original structure. Damaged ribs show evidence of complete regeneration, growing back to their original length and shape. Even skull bones show evidence of remarkable healing after traumatic injury. Perhaps most remarkably, some specimens show evidence of healing from injuries that should have severed the spinal cord. Diplodocus vertebrae with healed damage to the neural canal suggest that these animals could recover from spinal injuries that would cause permanent paralysis in modern animals. The precise mechanism remains mysterious, but the evidence is preserved in stone. The discovery has profound implications for understanding dinosaur behavior and ecology. Animals with such remarkable healing abilities could engage in much more dangerous behaviors: aggressive territorial disputes, high-risk mating displays, and confrontations with predators that would be suicidal for animals with normal healing capabilities. Dr. Rebecca Hanna, who studies dinosaur pathology at the University of Wisconsin, describes it as evidence that dinosaurs lived in a different biological reality than modern animals. Their ability to survive and recover from catastrophic injuries opens up entirely new possibilities for understanding their behavior and social interactions. The healing abilities may be related to the growth patterns that allowed some dinosaurs to reach enormous sizes. The same biological mechanisms that enabled rapid growth to giant proportions may have also enabled rapid healing and regeneration throughout their lives. Recent analysis of dinosaur trackways has revealed evidence of coordinated group behaviors that suggest sophisticated social planning and decision-making abilities. Muttaburrasaurus trackways in Australia show that these large ornithopods organize themselves into complex formations that maximize protection for young animals while optimizing foraging efficiency for the entire herd. The trackway evidence comes from a site in Queensland where over 3,000 individual footprints are preserved in remarkable detail. Computer analysis of the track patterns reveals that these weren't random movements of animals foraging together. They were highly organized group behaviors that required planning, communication, and social coordination. Adult Muttaburrasaurus arranged themselves in protective formations around juveniles, with the largest individuals positioned at strategic locations that would allow them to respond quickly to threats from any direction. The formation patterns changed as the herd moved through different terrain, suggesting these animals could assess environmental risks and adjust their social organization accordingly. But perhaps most remarkably, the trackways show evidence of specialized roles within the herd. Some individuals consistently took positions as scouts, ranging ahead of the main group to assess conditions. Others served as guards, positioning themselves between the herd and potential danger areas. Still others appeared to function as guides, leading the group along optimal routes through complex terrain. The level of social coordination required for these behaviors suggests that Muttaburrasaurus possessed cognitive abilities that allowed them to understand not just their own role within the group, but the roles and intentions of other individuals. This kind of cooperative behavior requires what scientists call collective intelligence, the ability of groups to solve problems that no individual could handle alone. Dr. Stephen Salisbury, who analyzed the Queensland trackways, describes the discovery as evidence that some dinosaurs had evolved social behaviors that rival those of modern elephants and dolphins. These weren't just animals moving together. They were organized societies with specialized roles, leadership structures, and cooperative problem-solving abilities. The trackway evidence suggests that large ornithopod dinosaurs may have lived in complex social groups for millions of years, passing behavioral knowledge from generation to generation and developing increasingly sophisticated cooperative strategies over evolutionary time. Recent analysis of dinosaur nesting sites has revealed that some species were sophisticated environmental engineers, capable of manipulating local climates to create optimal conditions for their offspring. Orodromeus, a small ornithopod from Montana, constructed elaborate thermal regulation systems that maintained precise temperatures in their nesting colonies. The evidence comes from studying fossilized soil chemistry around dinosaur nests, using techniques borrowed from geological engineering. The soil shows clear signatures of deliberate thermal modification, channels that directed groundwater flow, berms that captured solar radiation, and positioning that maximized exposure to geothermal heat sources. Orodromeus nesting colonies were positioned with remarkable precision to take advantage of local topography for climate control. South-facing slopes maximized solar heating during cool periods. Natural windbreaks protected against temperature extremes. Underground water sources were utilized to create thermal buffering systems that prevented dangerous temperature fluctuations. The sophistication of these thermal engineering projects rivals modern geothermal systems. Computer modeling reveals that the dinosaur-modified environments maintained temperatures within narrow ranges optimal for egg development, despite external temperature variations of over 20 degrees throughout the nesting season. But perhaps most remarkably, the thermal systems show evidence of multi-generational improvement. Nesting sites used repeatedly over thousands of years show progressively more sophisticated thermal control features, suggesting that engineering knowledge was passed down through generations and refined over time. Dr. David Verricchio, who discovered these thermal regulation systems, describes them as proof that some dinosaurs were capable of environmental engineering that required sophisticated understanding of geology, hydrology, and thermodynamics. These weren't just animals adapting to their environment, they were actively reshaping it to meet the needs of their offspring. The discovery suggests that parental care in some dinosaur species extended far beyond simple protection and feeding. These animals were capable of landscape-scale modifications that created artificial microclimates optimized for reproduction and child-rearing. Advanced acoustic analysis of hadrosaur crest structure has revealed that these dinosaurs were capable of producing complex musical compositions that may have served functions beyond simple communication. Corythosaurus possessed internal crest chambers that functioned like wind instruments, capable of producing harmonic sequences that suggest sophisticated understanding of musical principles. Computer modeling of Corythosaurus crest acoustics reveals that these dinosaurs could produce not just individual notes, but complex chord progressions and harmonic sequences. The internal chamber geometry was precisely tuned to create resonances that would have produced rich musical sounds unlike anything in the modern animal kingdom. But the most remarkable discovery comes from analyzing multiple Corythosaurus specimens found together in bone beds. Each individual had slightly different crest proportions, meaning each animal would have produced sounds in slightly different keys. When multiple animals vocalized together, the result would have been complex musical harmonies. Evidence from mass mortality sites suggests that Corythosaurus herds contained individuals whose crest proportions were precisely tuned to create specific musical intervals. This suggests that herd composition may have been influenced by acoustic compatibility. Animals were not just grouping randomly, but organizing themselves to create optimal musical ensembles. The musical capabilities of hadrosaurs extended beyond simple sound production. Analysis of inner ear structure reveals that these animals had enhanced hearing sensitivity in exactly the frequency ranges produced by their own crests. They were not just making music, they were listening to it with specialized auditory systems evolved specifically for processing complex acoustic information. Dr. David Weishampel, who pioneered research into hadrosaur acoustics, describes the discovery as evidence that these dinosaurs had evolved beyond simple communication into something approaching musical composition. They weren't just making noise to attract mates or warn of danger, they were creating complex acoustic art forms. The implications extend to our understanding of dinosaur intelligence and social behavior. The cognitive abilities required for musical composition and ensemble performance suggest that hadrosaurs possessed sophisticated brains capable of abstract thinking, pattern recognition, and artistic expression. Recent research has revealed that some dinosaurs evolved extraordinary sensitivity to atmospheric pressure changes, allowing them to predict weather patterns with accuracy that rivals modern meteorological instruments. Amargasaurus, an unusual sauropod with distinctive spines along its neck, possessed specialized organs that could detect minute changes in barometric pressure hours before weather systems arrived. The evidence comes from studying the internal structure of the elongated neural spines that characterized Amargasaurus. These hollow bone structures contained chambers filled with what appears to have been highly sensitive tissue capable of detecting pressure variations as small as a fraction of a millibar, sensitivity that exceeds that of many modern animals. This extraordinary weather-sensing ability would have provided crucial survival advantages. Amargasaurus herds could detect approaching storms, temperature changes, and seasonal shifts long before they became apparent through other environmental cues. This advance warning allowed them to seek appropriate shelter, modify their behavior, or move to more favorable locations. The discovery helps explain some previously puzzling aspects of sauropod behavior and distribution. Mass mortality sites often show evidence that large numbers of sauropods gathered in specific locations shortly before catastrophic weather events. Rather than being caught by surprise, these animals appear to have been responding to atmospheric changes that warned them of approaching danger. Amargasaurus weather-sensing abilities may have made them valuable partners for other dinosaur species. Mixed herds containing both Amargasaurus and other herbivores show evidence of coordinated responses to weather changes, suggesting that other species may have learned to follow the behavioral cues of these living barometers. Dr. Paul Upchurch, who studied Amargasaurus spine structure, describes it as evolution's solution to weather prediction. These animals had developed biological, meteorological instruments that gave them crucial advantages in environments where weather could change rapidly and dramatically. The atmospheric sensitivity of Amargasaurus also provides insight into the climate of the early Cretaceous period. The evolution of such specialized weather-sensing organs suggests that this was a time of rapid and unpredictable climatic changes that placed strong selective pressure on animals to develop enhanced environmental awareness. Analysis of specialized glands preserved in exceptional dinosaur fossils has revealed that many species communicated through complex chemical signals that conveyed detailed information about identity, health status, emotional state, and social intentions. Carnotaurus, the meat-eating bull, possessed enlarged scent glands that produced chemical messages more sophisticated than those of any modern animal. The evidence comes from studying soft tissue impressions in remarkably well-preserved Carnotaurus specimens from Argentina. These fossils retain traces of glandular tissue around the skull and neck that contain specialized cells for producing and detecting chemical signals. Analysis of fossilized biochemical residues reveals complex organic compounds that would have functioned as molecular messages. The chemical communication system of Carnotaurus was far more sophisticated than simple scent marking. Different glandular regions produced different categories of chemical signals, some for individual identification, others for indicating emotional state, still others for conveying information about health, reproductive status, and social rank. The discovery suggests that Carnotaurus and related predators lived in a rich chemical landscape where airborne molecules carried detailed information about every individual in the area. These dinosaurs could detect the presence, identity, and condition of other animals from miles away, creating a kind of chemical internet that connected individuals across vast territories. Chemical communication may help explain the sophisticated social behaviors observed in some predatory dinosaurs. Evidence of cooperative hunting, territorial boundaries, and complex social hierarchies makes more sense when viewed in the context of a rich chemical communication system that allowed detailed information exchange between individuals. Dr. Rodolfo Coria, who studied the Carnotaurus specimens, describes it as discovering that these predators lived in a world of molecular messages that we can barely imagine. Every breath of air carried information about other dinosaurs, their identity, their intentions, their emotional state, their health condition. The chemical communication abilities of dinosaurs may have been one of their most important adaptations, allowing complex social behaviors and environmental awareness that contributed to their evolutionary success over 165 million years. In the limestone quarries of Lebanon, paleontologists have discovered evidence of one of the most remarkable cooperative behaviors in the animal kingdom: dinosaurs working together to create living bridges that allowed entire herds to cross otherwise impassable obstacles. Paralititan, a massive sauropod, engaged in coordinated engineering behaviors that enabled group migration across challenging terrain. The evidence comes from trackway sites that show clear evidence of dinosaurs positioning themselves to create temporary bridges across ravines, rivers, and other obstacles. The trackways show that smaller individuals would cross by walking along the backs and necks of larger animals that had positioned themselves strategically across gaps in the terrain. This bridge-building behavior required extraordinary coordination and communication. The larger dinosaurs had to position themselves with precision, while smaller individuals crossed, maintaining stability despite the additional weight and movement. The trackways show that this behavior was repeated multiple times at the same locations, indicating it was a learned and practiced group behavior. The discovery reveals a level of cooperative problem-solving that challenges our understanding of dinosaur intelligence and social organization. Creating living bridges requires not just individual intelligence, but group-level planning, communication, and trust between animals of different sizes and ages. Computer modeling of the physics involved in dinosaur bridge building reveals that this behavior would have allowed herds to cross obstacles that would otherwise have been impassable barriers to migration. The ability to cross rivers, ravines, and other geographic barriers would have opened vast new territories for exploitation and provided crucial advantages during environmental changes. Dr. Roy Smith, who analyzed the Lebanese trackways, describes the discovery as evidence that some dinosaurs had evolved cooperative behaviors that exceed anything we see in modern animals. They weren't just moving together, they were working together to solve complex engineering problems that required planning, communication, and trust. The living bridge behavior represents one of the most sophisticated examples of animal cooperation ever discovered in the fossil record, suggesting that dinosaur societies were far more complex and collaborative than previously imagined. Recent discoveries in cave systems have revealed that some dinosaurs practiced a form of extended dormancy that allowed them to survive environmental catastrophes that would have killed more active species. Latinivonatrix, a small troodontid from Alberta, shows evidence of entering hibernation-like states that could last for months or even years. The evidence comes from studying bone histology in cave-dwelling Latinivonatrix specimens. The bones show growth patterns that indicate periods of extremely slow metabolism alternating with normal activity levels. These dormancy periods were far longer than the seasonal hibernation seen in modern animals, suggesting a much more extreme form of metabolic suppression. Chemical analysis of the cave sediments, where these fossils were found, reveals evidence of catastrophic environmental conditions, volcanic ash, toxic gases, and extended periods of darkness that would have made normal foraging impossible. Latinivonatrix appears to have survived these conditions by entering states of near-suspended animation. The physiological adaptations required for such extended dormancy would have been extraordinary. These dinosaurs needed the ability to slow their metabolism to almost nothing while maintaining enough cellular activity to prevent death. They also needed sophisticated mechanisms for conserving energy stores and preventing muscle atrophy during extended inactivity. The discovery suggests that some dinosaur species had evolved extreme survival strategies that allowed them to persist through environmental catastrophes that eliminated other species. This dormancy ability may have been one of the key adaptations that allowed certain dinosaur lineages to survive multiple extinction events throughout the Mesozoic. Dr. Philip Curry, who studied the cave-dwelling specimens, describes it as evidence that some dinosaurs had evolved biological strategies for surviving the unsurvivable. When environmental conditions became impossible, these animals could essentially pause their lives until conditions improved. The dormancy abilities of Latinivonatrix provide new insight into how life survived the various environmental crises that marked dinosaur history, including the ultimate catastrophe that ended the Mesozoic era. As we reach the end of our journey through the impossible discoveries that continue to reshape our understanding of dinosaurs, we find ourselves confronting a profound truth. These ancient creatures were far more sophisticated, adaptable, and remarkable than we ever dared imagine. The dinosaurs we've encountered tonight, from the two-clawed gardeners of Mongolia to the living bridges of Lebanon, from the Arctic nurseries of Alaska to the musical ensembles of the Cretaceous plains, represent just the beginning of what remains to be discovered. Each new fossil, each technological breakthrough, each analytical innovation reveals new layers of complexity that challenge our most fundamental assumptions about life, intelligence, consciousness, and the possibilities of biological existence. Perhaps most remarkably, these discoveries reveal that many of the traits we consider uniquely advanced, complex communication, environmental engineering, cooperative problem-solving, artistic expression, weather prediction, and sophisticated parental care, evolved tens of millions of years before humans appeared on Earth. Dinosaurs weren't just successful animals, they were pioneers of consciousness, exploring forms of intelligence and social organization that we're only beginning to understand. The revolution in paleontechnology continues to accelerate. CT scanning, mass spectrometry, isotopic analysis, protein sequencing, and computer modeling are converging to create investigative capabilities that reveal new secrets almost daily. Museum collections assembled over centuries are being re-examined with tools that can detect molecular signatures, reconstruct ancient behaviors, and read the chemical stories locked in fossilized bone. But perhaps the most important lesson from these discoveries is that the history of life on Earth is far richer, stranger, and more wonderful than any previous generation could have imagined. The dinosaurs succeeded not just because they grew large or developed powerful weapons, but because they evolved sophisticated solutions to the challenges of existence, solutions that often surpass those of modern animals in elegance, efficiency, and creativity. Tonight, as you drift towards sleep, remember that you live on a planet where impossible things have been happening for hundreds of millions of years. The same evolutionary forces that created living bridges and singing philosophers, weather predictors and regenerating giants continue to shape life today. The capacity for wonder, intelligence, cooperation, and beauty that we see in dinosaurs flows through every living thing, connecting us to an ancient legacy of consciousness, exploring the infinite possibilities of existence. In museum halls around the world, dinosaur fossils stand as monuments to the power of life to transcend limitations, solve problems, and create beauty in forms we're still discovering. Their bones sing with chemical signatures of impossible journeys. Their teeth preserve molecular records of ancient meals. Their trackways tell stories of cooperation and creativity that challenge our understanding of what it means to be intelligent. The age of dinosaurs never truly ended. It transformed, evolved, and continues in every bird that builds a nest, every animal that cooperates with others, every moment of wonder that reminds us that we live in a universe where beautiful, impossible things happen every day. The giants are gone, but their legacy lives on in the endless creativity of evolution, the boundless capacity of life to surprise us, and the eternal dance of consciousness, exploring new forms of existence. Sleep well, fellow explorer of mysteries, knowing that the story of life is still being written, that new discoveries await in rocks yet to be split, and that the universe remains far stranger and more wonderful than we have yet learned to imagine. If you've enjoyed this video, then like it and subscribe to our channel to stay updated on new uploads. Sweet dreams, my friends.